For 11 years, I paid on a piece of Kansas ground. I never told a soul I was doing it. Not my father. Not the man I was married to at the time. I wasn't hiding anything, and I just didn't think it was worth saying out loud. Then, my ex-husband stood up in a courtroom in Clay Center. He raised his hand and swore he had carried that note alone. Nobody in that room argued with him. My aunt sat behind me, and she leaned up and put a hand on my shoulder. "Honey, you were gone. That's the whole trouble right there. I was gone, and everybody agreed I was gone. So how does a woman prove where her money went when money doesn't carry a face? To get you to that morning, I have to go back 12 years. I'm Georgeanne Stroud, 47 years old, and the Army's had 26 of them. I work bulk fuel, which is tanks, pumps, hoses, filters, and a gravel yard full of steel out at Fort Riley. I keep the fuel clean, I keep it moving, and that's the whole of the trade. It isn't farming, it isn't fighting, and I've never once pretended otherwise. My family only ever heard one word out of that, and the word was gone. There's a way people say it in a town like ours, and nobody means anything cruel by it." Georgeanne got out. "Sherman's girl went in the service. She don't come back much." All three of those are true. That's what made them so hard to stand under. My father's place sits north of Idana in Clay County. A quarter section, 160 acres, mostly wheat, a little milo on the low end. His name was Sherman Stroud, and he was born in that house and never once slept anywhere else in his life. My mother was Wilma, and she died 19 years ago in March. After that, my father got quieter than the ground gets in January. Here's the thing you have to know about him. He would not take help. Not from a bank, not from a neighbor, and not from me. One fall, the combine threw a bearing, and Aunt Ardith offered him her savings. "Keep it, Artie. Sherman, it's sitting in a drawer doing nothing." "Then let it sit." He pulled the part off a junked machine behind the shed and fixed it himself. When I tell you I paid that note in silence, understand what kind of silence it was. It wasn't sneaking, it was the only way on this earth he'd have let it happen. 12 years ago, he had a stroke in the equipment shed. Aunt Ardith found him sitting against the tire of the grain drill. I was overseas at a fuel farm, in the desert, 10.5 hours ahead of Kansas. The call came at 2 in the morning, my time. Ardith's voice was flat, the way it goes when she's holding on. "He's talking. He isn't making sense yet." "Is he awake?" "In and out." "Did he ask for me?" "He asked for your mother." "Is he going to be able to work?" "Honey, I don't know." I got scared. Then plain scared, standing in a tent in my socks. He came back part way, but his right hand never came all the way back. I called him from a phone tent on a Sunday. "Dad, Georgeanne." "How's the hand?" "It's fine." "Ardith says you dropped a cup." "Ardith talks." I waited him out. He breathed at me a while. "You need anything?" "No." "I've got money sitting there doing nothing." "Don't start." "I'm only asking." "I said don't start." That was the last time I ever asked him, and I didn't try twice. But the note came due whether his hand worked or not. That note sat on the quarter section. My father had borrowed against the ground in a bad stretch of years. The Farm Credit Association held the paper. Ardith gave me the figure over the phone. $620 a month. For how long? 11 more years, honey. I did the arithmetic on a truck hood in a place where the wind never quit. It was the first week of December. Then I walked across the gravel to the finance office. A plywood room with a window unit knocking in the wall. A young clerk with a bad sunburn slid a form across the desk. "Allotment." "Yes." "Payable to who?" I gave him the name of the association and the loan number off a slip in my pocket. "Amount." $620. He typed while the window unit knocked. "Start date, 1st of next month." "How long do you want it to run?" "Until I tell you to stop." "Ma'am, that's not a box I can leave empty." "Then put 11 years. He printed it, I signed it, and he looked over at the copy tray. "You want a copy to keep?" "No." "It'll show on your pay statement." That's fine. Ma'am, most folks take the copy. I'm good. And I walked out into that white, flat sunlight with nothing in my hands. I felt calm about it, which is the part I still can't explain to anybody. Sit with that a second. Because I've had 12 years to. There was one piece of paper in the world with my name and that loan on the same line. Nobody opened it, and nobody argued over it. And I turned it down. That's the version of me you have to carry into the rest of this. Not brave, not careful, just a woman who thought paperwork was for people who needed proof of things. 12 years later, a lawyer in a gray suit stood 8 feet from me. He asked me to hand over that exact piece of paper. I had to say the same word I said to that clerk. I met Dwight Yandell at a bin site outside Greene the summer I turned 23. He was up on the ladder with a scoop shovel. He came down backward the whole way. That's the wrong way, and he knew it. You're Sherman's girl. I'm Georgeanne. That's what I said. We were married a year later at the church in Clay Center. The Army already had me by then. He had 120 acres of his own across the section line. Let me be fair to the man, because this whole thing goes crooked if I'm not. Dwight Yandell is good on ground. He can walk a field and tell you what it wants. He drills straight. He fixes what breaks, and he doesn't complain out loud about weather, which, out there, is nearly a religion. Some years my father liked him better than he liked me. I was bitter about that once, and I'm not now. He said it out loud to me on the phone one time, and heard nothing wrong with it. That boy's a good hand. I know he is. Better hand than you've got a right to. The marriage went the way they go when one person keeps leaving. 3 tours in 9 years. Kuwait, then Afghanistan, then a longer stretch after that. He'd send me pictures of the wheat. I sent him nothing back because nobody wants a picture of a tank yard. We signed the divorce 10 years ago at a table on the square. It took 11 minutes, and nobody raised a voice. You want the truck? You keep the truck. Georgeanne. What? I'm going to stay on your dad's place. I know. He asked me to. I know that too. Anything else you want? No. Georgeanne, look at me. I'm looking. That's the whole divorce. Ardith said it plainest. Somebody had to be on that ground. I know it. Your daddy was 68, with half a hand. I know that too. So Dwight farmed the quarter on shares. There was never one page of paper about it. That's how it goes between people who sat in the same grade school room. He put a new tile line in on the low end the second year. He hauled my father to Salina for appointments when the roads got bad. A man like that doesn't think of himself as a liar. Keep hold of that because you'll want it later. And every first of the month, $620 came out of my pay. It went before I ever laid eyes on it. Straight to the association, and the balance came down. I never got a statement because the statements went where the note said to send them. The note said the mailbox at the end of my father's lane. Dwight brought the mail in, and Dwight opened it. Dwight saw a page that said, paid month after month, year after year. Nobody hid anything, and not one page was ever buried. Aunt Ardith Pilcher is my mother's sister. She's 74, and she runs that town through a telephone. She called every couple of weeks with the whole rundown. Dwight put beans in on the low end. Beans. Beans, honey. Dad let him. Your dad's asleep in the chair by 3 most days. Is Dwight paying rent? On what? On the ground, Artie. Honey, nobody out there has talked money in years. My father died 3 years ago in October, in that chair with the television going. I flew in the night before the funeral in a black dress that didn't fit. He left no will, though. People had been at him about it for 20 years. Sherman, go see Ione Grubbs. I'll get to it. You've said that 4 years running. And I'll get to it. He never got to it. I'm the only child he had, so that ground came to me the day he died. Every soul in the family knew it. Not one of them said a word about it for 2.5 years. Nobody said a word about the note either, because the note kept getting paid. He died in October, and the allotment went out on the 1st of November. and the 1st of December, and every first after that because I never called anybody to shut it off. I told myself I'd deal with it the next time I had leave. That note came off the books in December of last year, and I didn't know it had. 3 more payments left my pay before anybody thought to tell me. In June, my aunt called at 9 at night, and she wasn't calling with the rundown. "Georgeanne, what's wrong? Are you sitting down?" "Ardith, just say it. They're saying Dwight's putting his name on your daddy's quarter." I laughed. "That's talk. It isn't the beauty shop kind." "Who's saying it?" "Everybody who was at the elevator Tuesday." I told her I'd look into it, and then didn't look into one thing for 3 weeks, which is on me. The second week of July, my phone rang from a number in green. "Mrs. Stroud, this is Truman Deal, out at the co-op." "I know who you are." The board seated Dwight as the listed operator on that quarter. Seated him when? Tuesday evening. Nobody called me. "You're not on the account, ma'am." "Is there a paper on it?" "On what?" "On him being seated. There's minutes." He wasn't being ugly with me. He was just telling me how the world is arranged. A room full of men in folding chairs voted on something in about 4 minutes. It never crossed one mind to call a woman 30 miles up the road. I was angry for about an hour. Then I got embarrassed, and embarrassed is worse. That Sunday I drove out to the quarter by myself. The wheat was long off the stubble, stood up gray in the last of the light, and somebody had disked the low end already. The tile line Dwight put in was doing its job. You could tell by where the water wasn't. I sat on my tailgate at the end of the lane. The yard light came on up at the house. Ardith called me while I was sitting there. "Where are you at?" "End of the lane." "Well then, go up to the house." "No." "Georgeanne." "Not tonight, Artie." I drove back to Riley without knocking on that door. I've thought about that drive more than I've thought about the hearing. Here's what I should have thought hard about that night and didn't. Back in April, an envelope had come to me at Fort Riley, forwarded twice, with a little window in it. I opened it, standing at the boxes with my keys in my teeth. A check for $1,860, and one line of print above it that said, "Overpayment, refund, loan, satisfied." So I did the arithmetic again 12 years later, and it came out to 3 months. 3 payments that went out after the note was already dead. I called the number off the stub. "Is this refund right?" "It is." "Why am I getting money back?" "Because that loan is paid, ma'am." I wish I could tell you I understood what I had in my hand, but I didn't. I put it in the door pocket of my truck with the gas receipts. It rode around out there all summer. That was the first paper in 11 years with my name and that loan on one page. Second chance at one, and the second one I set down. On a Thursday in the middle of August, I was at the fuel point. We were topping off a contract tanker. Heat came up off the pad in sheets. The whole yard smelled like hot steel. The driver hooked his clipboard on the mirror. "Ma'am, you all right?" "Why?" "You've been watching that hose for about a minute and a half." "I'm fine." "Yes, ma'am." 2 days later, I signed for a certified envelope at the post office in Ogden. I carried it out to my truck and opened it. Door hanging open, one boot on the gravel. A petition to quiet title Yandell against the estate of Sherman Stroud and against me by name. The claim was that my father had promised it to him in words years back at the kitchen table, and that Dwight had done the 3 things that make a promise like that stick. He had been on the ground. He had improved the ground, and he had made every payment on that note. That last leg was the whole table. Pull it out, and everything on top goes over. I sat there with the door open, the dome light on, the August heat coming in on me. Then I said it out loud to nobody, the first time since I signed that form. I paid for that. And the second I heard my own voice, I understood how much trouble I was in. Because I could not show one living person a single sheet of paper that said so. I called Ardith from my driveway that night. "Artie, what is it?" "He filed on the quarter." "He what?" "He filed on it. In court." She went quiet a good while. You come to my kitchen Saturday. So that Saturday, I sat down at her table in Clay Center. She's got a table with a metal edge on it, and a bowl of hard candy nobody's touched since before I enlisted. You need a lawyer. I need one who isn't going to charge me a farm. Go see Ione Grubbs. Dad never went to see Ione Grubbs. And look how that turned out. That's my aunt. 74 years old, and she'll put a knife in you sideways if she thinks it'll help. Mrs. Ione Grubbs keeps an office on the north side of the square. It's up over a shop that sells tack and boots. She's 68, and she has written wills and settled small estates out of that one room for 40 years. She has never served a day in her life. She'll tell you so before you get a chance to ask. I don't do military work. I don't know the first thing about it. I'm not here about that. Good. I'm saying that plain because I know what a story like this makes people expect. Somewhere in here, an old colonel is supposed to come set it all right. Nobody like that showed up. Just a small-town lawyer in a cardigan. She had a space heater going under her desk in August. She went through the petition twice with a pencil and never wrote a mark on it. Well, he loses 2 of the 3. Which 2? Being on the ground and improving it? Half the county's been on that ground. And the third one is the case. He did not make those payments. I believe you. But belief isn't an exhibit. She set the pencil down and pushed her glasses up into her hair. Here's the only real advice in this office. Are you listening to me? Yes, ma'am. Don't argue with his testimony. Not one word it. He's lying under oath. Let him. Go order the certified payment history yourself. Pay for it out of your own pocket. That's the whole plan. Order a title search while you're at it. And then, what? And then we find out who's lying. What's this going to cost me? Less than you're afraid of. Give me a number. 200 and I'll bill you in the spring. I called the association branch that afternoon from her parking lot. A woman took my request and told me 2 things I didn't want to hear. Name on the note, Sherman Stroud. And you are his daughter. Certified copies run $240. Fine. And it's 18 business days. 18. The certified ones go through the servicing center, ma'am. The title search was $300 more out of the abstract office 2 doors down. I paid for both at a counter with a card standing up like a woman buying tires. $540. That's the only part of this whole business I actually did. I've heard how stories like mine usually go, and this one is not that. Nobody hid a thing from me, and there was no page locked in a drawer. Nothing got shredded, and nothing got dug up out of a courthouse basement. Every fact in this case had been sitting out in the open for 11 years. It sat in 2 filing systems that had never once been in the same room. The thing that had never existed was the comparison. Not one soul had ever set that note down beside my pay. Nobody looked at the 2 of them together. Not the association, not the court, not my father. Not me either. That's what I bought for $540, and I didn't buy the truth. The truth had been out there the whole time in 2 pieces. What I paid for was somebody putting both halves on one table. 18 business days is a long time in August. I called Mrs. Grubbs the morning the envelope came. Good. Now the other thing. What other thing? Paper doesn't talk, Mrs. Stroud. Meaning what? Meaning somebody out of that association has to stand up, in that room, and say what it means. Will they do that? Not for you, they won't. Mrs. Grubbs put it to me straight the next morning. That woman does not work for you. I paid them for 11 years. You paid the loan. It isn't the same thing. So what do? We make it not her choice. She had the clerk issue a subpoena that afternoon. That subpoena is the hinge of this whole thing. That paper only existed because I'd already ordered the history and paid for it myself. Nobody handed me a thing, and no judge went hunting on my behalf. I bought the file, and then I bought the paper that made a woman come and say out loud what was in it. I went by the branch office anyway 2 days later because I couldn't help myself. Levon Weatherly has a corner desk and a window that looks at the grain leg. 14 years with the association, and a way of talking that leaves no handles on it. Mrs. Stroud, I wanted to thank you for the file. You paid for the file. Well, thank you anyway. Are you asking me something? I suppose I'm asking whose side you're on. Nobody's. That was the whole answer. Nobody's. She pulled her glasses off and looked at me straight on. I'm not on his side either. You see the difference? I think so. The association got paid. That's what I know, and that's what I'll say. Then why did nobody ever tell anybody? Because nobody ever asked us. Will you say that in a courtroom? If a subpoena tells me to. And if one doesn't, then I'll be at this desk. So I put her the question I'd been hauling since August. How does a thing like this go 11 years? 2 reasons. They're both boring. Tell me the boring ones. Your statements went to the address on the note, the mailbox at the end of the lane. That's right. We mail where the note tells us to mail. And the second one, an allotment comes out before your pay ever hits your bank. I leaned back and felt something turn over in me. So it never showed up in my checking account. It never showed up anywhere you'd think to look. Nowhere at all. Not on a bank statement. Not on a tax return. 2 places on this earth, ma'am. Which 2? Your pay office. And mine. That's the whole 11 years said by a woman at a corner desk in about 40 seconds. One more thing, Mrs. Stroud. Yes, ma'am. Don't thank me in that courtroom. All right. Now let me be exact about what this case was. Dwight Yandell never took $1 of mine, not one. He never touched an account of mine, and there wasn't an account of mine for him to touch. He didn't steal anything. What he did was stand up and take credit for 11 years of somebody else's work. That's a different thing than stealing, and it lands in a different place in you. The hearing got set for the 6th of October in front of Judge Orville Pennebaker. Harvest was on by then, Milo and beans coming off trucks nose to tail at the elevator in green. Ardith called me the night before. Are you nervous? No. Georgeanne. A little. Wear something nice. I'm coming off shift, Artie. Then wear that. Artie. What? Will you sit behind me? Where else would I sit? I pulled a 12-hour shift on the 5th and got off at 6 in the morning on the 6th. There wasn't time to drive home and change. If I'm honest, I didn't want to. So I drove to Clay Center in my duty uniform, with the sun coming up over the stubble. My father's canvas barn coat was folded on the seat beside me. I'd carried it out of the closet at the house back in September and never carried it back in. In the right pocket of that coat was one of his work gloves. Just the one. Leather worn clean through at the thumb, still holding the shape of a hand that isn't anywhere anymore. I couldn't have told you that morning why I brought it. I know now. The courthouse in Clay Center is limestone with a green roof. The courtroom is up a flight of stairs on the 2nd floor. They had the windows open that morning. The heat in that building comes on by the calendar and not by the weather. You could hear combines working out past the edge of town. All morning long, that sound coming and going with the wind. There was chaff in the air even up there. It hung in the light through the east windows and settled on the tables. Here's a thing about that morning that people never believe. Nobody was in a hurry. The hearing had been on the calendar since the middle of August. Nothing was getting sold that afternoon, and no money was moving anywhere at 4 o'clock. Whatever weight was in that room came off 11 years, and not off any clock. Judge Orville Pennebaker came in at 9 straight up. 60-some glasses shoved up on his head sleeves already rolled. I'll say this now, and I'll say it again later. That judge never opened one exhibit, not one. And he never picked a page up. He never laid a finger on a single thing that went to the clerk. He put questions, and he listened, and everything in that room got decided out loud. Dwight went first, pressed shirt, fresh haircut, hands flat on his knees. His lawyer is a man named Verlin Dobrinsky out of Concordia. Gray suit, quiet voice, no theater in him anywhere. Dobrinsky had a boot box sitting on the table. Mr. Yandel, what's in the box? Statements. From who? The association. 11 years of them. How did you come by them? Out of the mailbox. Every one. How many acres are we talking about? 160. And who worked it? I did. 11 years running. And he had done it. And every word of that was true. They went through the box year by year, statement balance, statement balance. It took 20 minutes, and it was the strongest 20 minutes of that man's life. Then Dobrinsky asked the question he'd come there to ask. Who made those payments? I did. All of them. Every one. Did Mrs. Stroud contribute? Dwight turned a little in that chair and looked right at me. She never put a dime into that ground. Nobody in the room moved. Ardith leaned up behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. Honey, you were gone. She meant it kindly. Even the woman who loves me best in this world sat there and believed him. And I didn't say one word. Mrs. Grubbs had told me not to argue, so I didn't argue. I've never worked as hard at anything in my life as I worked at sitting still. They called Levon Weatherly a little after 10. She came up the aisle in a navy jacket with a folder under her arm. She took the oath like a woman checking a box. State your position, please. Farm Credit Officer, 14 years. Do you know Mrs. Stroud? I've met her one time. Are you here on her account? I'm here on a subpoena. Mrs. Grubbs let that sit a second. It was the only theatrical thing she did all day. You brought the certified payment history on that note. I did. Is it certified? Under seal. By the association. Who ordered it? She did. She paid for it herself. How is it different from what's in that box? That box says the note got paid. Mine says who paid it. Dobrinsky didn't object. There was nothing in that to object to. Go ahead then. I'll go year by year if that suits the court. The judge didn't reach for anything. He just tipped his chin at her. Suits me fine. Before you start, who is the remitter? It's the same on every line. Say it out loud, please. Stroud Georgeanne, Army payroll allotment. Then she started, and she didn't hurry either. First year 12 payments, and the same remitter. Second year 12 payments and the same remitter. Third year 12 payments and the same remitter. Fourth year 12 payments and the same remitter. Fifth year 12 payments and the same remitter. Out on the section south of town, a combine came around on the headland. The sound came up through the window and went away again. Sixth year 12 payments and the same remitter. Seventh year 12 payments and the same remitter. Eighth year 12 payments and the same remitter. Nobody in that room was breathing right by then, and I know I wasn't. Ninth year 12 payments and the same remitter. 10th year 12 payments and the same remitter. She turned the last page over. 11th year 12 payments, and the note came off in December. 11 lines, one for every year. What's the total? $81,840. Is there anything different about that last line? Only the grade. The what? The grade prints beside the name. It moves as the years go. What does the last one say? And Levon Weatherly said it out loud, exactly the way it prints. Sergeant Major Georgeanne Stroud. 26 years I'd been in. Nobody I'm related to had ever said those two words in a room with me. A woman I'd met one time said them off a page I paid $240 for. My eyes went then, and that was the only time all day. Then Verlin Dobrinsky stood up. He had one question left in him, and he should have kept it. Mrs. Weatherly, does that history say anything at all about my client? Levon Weatherly looked down at the page for about 2 seconds. His name isn't on any line in it. That was all of it, one sentence, and she stopped. Mrs. Grubbs didn't chase it, and she didn't ask it twice or 3 ways. I understood later that this was on purpose. You don't get to swing at a thing like that more than once. Then she put the title search in, and Dobrinsky didn't fight it because there was nothing in there to fight. No deed to Dwight Yandel, and no contract of any kind. Nothing filed on that ground with his name on it. Who got the release when the note came off? It mailed to the address on the note. which is the mailbox at the end of my client's lane. Here's what killed his case, and it wasn't me. His claim stood on 3 legs, being on the ground, improving the ground, and carrying the note. He had the first 2, and half the county would have said so under oath. But he swore to the third one, with his hand up, 10 feet from a woman holding the association's own history. You can be wrong about a thing and still be honest. You can't be wrong under oath and then ask a judge to hand you a farm. Dobrinsky asked for a recess at 11:20, and Pennybaker gave him 20 minutes. I went out in the hall to get away from people, and Dwight was already out there. He stood at the window at the end, hands shoved in his coat, watching trucks on the highway. Georgeanne. Dwight. 11 years. 11 years. Out of your pay. Out of my pay. Did you know? Know what? That it was me? No. Would it have changed anything? It would have changed everything. He nodded at the glass a while. You should have told me. Here's the part I've had to sit with ever since. He was right. I could have told him in any one of 4,000 phone calls. I could have told my father and taken the fight, and lost the fight, and told him anyway. I didn't tell a soul because I liked being the woman who didn't have to tell anybody. That is not strength, though I called it strength for 11 years. It's a way of keeping yourself out of the room. So when a man stood up and said, I never put a dime in that ground, there wasn't one living witness to say different. I'd arranged that myself, and nobody did it to me. Why didn't you? He'd have sent it back. He would have. And then he'd have lost the place. He would have. 2 people standing in a hallway agreeing about a dead man. Pennybaker came back at noon and ruled from where he sat in about 90 seconds. The spoken agreement failed, and the rest went down with it, because the leg holding it up was payment. Title stayed exactly where the law put it the day my father died, which is with me. That judge never touched a page of any of it. He never held the certified history, and he never opened the boot box. He settled the whole business off what came out of 2 women's mouths. Mrs. Grubbs shut her folder. That's it? That's it. It took 20 minutes. It took 11 years. Out in the hall afterward, Truman Deal was standing by the stairs with his cap in his hands. I hadn't known he was in the room. He'd been in the back row the whole morning. Mrs. Stroud. Mr. Deal. You were in the back all morning. I was. Why? Because I'm the one who seated him. The board didn't know. I believe you. We'd have called you. You'd have needed my number. He turned the cap over once. We'll get that account straightened out this week, Sergeant Major. That was the second time, and those are still the only 2 times anybody has said it to me in that county. I did not go out the front way. There were people out front who wanted to be kind, and I couldn't do it. So I went down the back stairs and out the steel door onto the concrete loading dock. It was after 4 by then, and I stood out there by myself for a long while. Duty uniform, the same one I'd pulled the shift in diesel, still on the cuffs. My father's barn coat over my arm because I never did put it on all day, and his glove down in my hand, hanging at my side, just the one glove. I'd had it in my fist through the whole afternoon and hadn't known it was there. The light came in low and sideways across the parking lot. Harvest dust hanging in it the way it does out there in October. A combine was still running somewhere north of town. I didn't cry out there because I'd already done that once, and once was all I had. I stood on that dock and held my father's glove and listened to somebody else's machine take a field off. Mrs. Grubbs asked me 2 days later whether I wanted to go after him. There's a word for that, and a county attorney 11 steps down the same hall. Do you want me to walk down there? No. You're entitled. I know I am. Let me be straight about why. Why not? That ground needs a body on it. It's had one since your daddy's hand quit. That's right. I'm 30 miles up the road on shift, and in 2 years, the Army moves me. Hauling Dwight Yandell into a courtroom a second time wouldn't put 1 bushel in a bin. So I did the thing that would have kept every bit of this from happening. I had Mrs. Grubbs draw up a lease. Cash rent 3 years, all of it spelled out. What he does, what I do, who pays for tile. We signed it in her office in November, at the same table with that space heater going. You want to argue about the rent? No. You can. It's fair. Then sign it. 3 years. 3. And after that? Then we talk again. He signed, and I signed under him. That was the first piece of paper that ever existed about that ground, and the two of us. 11 years of silence, and it took 1 afternoon and $40 to fix. We talk twice a year now. Once before planting, once after harvest, and both calls are about rain. Rain get you half an inch. We got nothing out here. You never do. They aren't warm, and they aren't cold either. They're the calls two people make across a fence that they both agree on. Ardith took the whole thing harder than I did. She apologized to me 4 separate times for that hand on my shoulder. You didn't do a thing, Artie. I believed him. Everybody believed him. I'm the one who made sure of it. Does it still hurt you? Some days. Which days? The quiet ones. That was 14 months ago. Last spring, I put a new mailbox at the end of that lane. Metal post set in concrete, my name on the side in stick-on letters. For 12 years, I couldn't be bothered to take a copy of anything. Now I've got my name bolted to a post at the end of a dirt road. I look at it every time I drive by. His glove is in the door pocket of my truck. It's been in there since October, and it isn't going anywhere. Ardith rides out with me in the fall. We sit on the tailgate and watch another man take the crop off my ground, and she brings that hard candy nobody eats. Here's the one thing I've got straight now, after missing it the whole way through. It took me until 47. There's a kind of pride that looks exactly like strength from the outside. You pay for things quietly. You don't ask anybody for anything. You handle it and you feel steady doing it. And every quiet year you spend that way, you take one more person out of the room. One more person who could have stood up later and said, I know what she did. Self-reliance doesn't cost you money. It costs you witnesses. That's the bill. And it comes due years afterward, in a room you never pictured yourself standing in. I'm not sorry I paid that note. I'd set it up again tomorrow morning, but I'd tell one person. Just the one. That's all it ever would have taken. Pass this along to somebody who's been carrying something quietly, and then go ask them about it. If you want another story like it, subscribe, and I'll be here.